Hey guys, welcome to Coach's Corner. It's Coach Clay and
Philly Physiques. How y'all doing?
And today, what are we talking about, Phil?
We're going to talk about prep diets, and we're going to break that down into our carbs, fats, and proteins, and dieting into different divisions, and why we diet differently into different divisions.
Absolutely.
I guess different divisions and different body types.
Right, right.
Together.
Let's talk about this first. Let's get the basics out of the way because a lot of you don't realize what the basics are. So we're taught that we have 3 macronutrients, which is a whole different topic because there's actually different macronutrients, but we're only going to talk about the big 3 today. Your protein, your carbs, and your fats. So starting off, we're going to talk about protein. How many calories go into a protein?
4.
4 calories.
4 calories for 1 gram of protein.
Yep. How many calories go into a fat?
9.
And that's 9 calories per 1 gram of fat. See the big difference there? Double and a quarter difference? 2.25 difference? Huh? Okay. Now, let's talk about carbs. How many calories go to a carb?
4 calories.
4 calories to a carb. Now, I'm going to start with carbs, and I'm going to give you an exclusion to the carbs, and that would be your alcohol sugars. Underneath protein bars and a lot of protein-based items, it'll say carbs, 21, of which 14 are alcohol sugars. Many alcohol sugars are fractions of calories difference. So what I'm meaning is some are like, let's say, 0.7 calories for that gram of carb rather than 1. So it works different being an alcohol sugar, but we're not worried about that because we don't give alcohol sugars on prep. But if you eat a protein bar that has it in it, you understand that it's a little bit different than going through your regular carb. But the 3 main carbs we're going to talk about today will be your fiber, then it will be your starchier carbs, and then your sugars. So let's talk about carbs a little bit. You like eating them?
I love carbs.
Everybody loves carbs. And it's funny because most people define how hard they're dieting by their carbs.
For the most part, yeah, absolutely. When you're on lower carbs, remember carbs is going to be your body's #1 fuel source. Obviously the carbs break down into 3 main categories like what he just talks about, which all of them are going to be important and all of them can be very useful in a prep. When it comes to your carbs, when you're eating a lot of carbs, you feel full, you feel energized, and they make you more hungry. Yes. Eating more carbs will always make you more hungry. When you're low on carbs, your fuel source is low. Now the point of bringing down your carbs is because it is your #1 fuel source. When your carbs get depleted, your body has to look for another source of energy. Hence, that's partially where fat burning comes into play.
Exactly.
Now, so your body has 3 gas tanks, say, right? You got protein, carbs, fats. Your carbs is your #1 fuel source. That's where your body's going to pull from all the time. That's why keto diets are a thing, is because you're eliminating the carb source, so your body is pulling only from the fat source. When your carbs are depleted, your body's going to look to pull from the other 2 places, your proteins and your fats. Now your body cannot differentiate between where it's going to pull from. Now this is important, and we'll get more into this when we get into the protein. While your protein intake is important, 1, for the muscle building aspect, but 2, holding your muscle when you get down in those lower calories. There's also things that we can take, such as L-carnitine, that help your body differentiate when your carb source is gone, whether it's going to pull from your fats or protein. L-carnitine is one of those things that's going to help you pull from your fat source, you know, your extra body weight, rather than pulling from your muscle, which is not what we want to do.
And L-carnitine is an amino acid that's abundant in our body, but the type of dieting that we do, you do, to get on stage, we're pushing our body to the max, so we're running out of our L-carnitine. That's when it's dangerous because you can lose a lot of muscle mass because the body can literally no longer shuttle the mitochondria to get the fat. That's your gas tank for your mitochondria, is your L-carnitine. That's why we use it in preps. Now, let's talk about fiber. Fiber is awesome because it makes you full, and it's not digested with an insulin spike like the starches and the sugars are. It actually goes into the intestines, and that's where it's drawn from. And you have an insoluble fiber that just goes through the body. So, fiber makes you feel full, so usually you have a lot of veggies and sometimes fruits on your diet. One of the things that I do is I keep fruits in a lot. One, for antioxidants, but two, some of your berries, like your blackberries, your raspberries especially, have a high fiber content, but they have some sugar with them. So pre and post workout time frames, excellent source. High antioxidants, high in fiber, but some sugar, and you mix that with, like we use, cream of rice. Cream of rice is easy to go down, digest quickly, usually no bloating, you know. So then you get that starchy carb, which is another carb that we talked about. And the starchiness is not normally as fast as a sugar, but it provides great energy to our body for a good run. It's usually why your biggest meals pre and post workout are carbohydrates and have a lot of starchy carbs. Now, we can sit all day on top of carbs and we can talk about them. I mean, we talked about making a video just about carbs. But we're going to kick it over to, you want to talk about proteins or fat first?
Let's go to the proteins first.
Let's talk about proteins. We'll leave the tastefulness for last.
When it comes to proteins, especially when it's going into a prep diet, like I kind of touched on before, it's extremely important because protein is obviously protein sparing. Carbs are also protein sparing. So when you're dieting down and you're down on calories, you'll notice that as your carbs go down, especially towards the end of the prep, your protein will go up. It's normally different going into peak week. We'll bring the protein down. We'll talk about that because that's another topic. Protein is important, obviously, for one, our muscle building, and two, that's, like I was just mentioning, the protein sparing.
And recovery. Not enough protein, you remain sore much longer. There's a lot of newer studies that come out. They've tested all the way up to, I believe it was 2.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And what they're doing is, in these tests, they're showing how muscle is built and how effective at what level. Some years ago, there was some good information at 1.4 to 1.7 is the best and optimal. One big thing to know about protein, out of all your macronutrients, protein takes the most to break down. So if you're eating, let's say 100 grams of protein, because it's an easy number to deal with, it's going to take 20% of that to break down the protein. So that means your body's getting roughly 80 grams, where carbs might be only 7%. You know, it takes 7% of the carbohydrates that you eat to break down. And that's all you're losing through your digestion and the energy spent through digestion. So that's something to note, because protein is very hard to break down for the body. So breaking it down and eating more of it, you're also losing some of it. So we like to keep protein in the 1.4 to 1.7 range. One, remember, it's 4 calories per gram. We're eating a lot of grams. You can add up calorically really fast, you know, 150 grams, and you're at 600 calories. That's a lot of calories coming in from some protein. Now, when you're eating, I'm 255 pounds right now, and I'm eating 350 grams of protein, do the math. Multiply that times 4, and that's how much calories I take in just from my protein alone, not including carbs and fats. So if you have to be in a deficit to cut fat, whether it's through training, whether it's through cardio, or through eating, or through all three, like we are in prep, it's something that you have to consider. But protein is the one out of all of them that I like to keep in the most of. It is what repairs you, and that's the biggest thing, is keeping your muscle and repairing you. Because we're going to be sore during prep. We do a lot of cardio, we do a lot of workouts, you might have your HIIT, all that's going to add up and it's wearing on your body. Throw the amino profile in there from the protein, let it heal the muscles. Now, protein also, one big thing about protein is you need to make sure you're picking sources high in leucine. And don't pick sources higher in fat unless it's the time of day you should be bringing in your fats. Because many proteins, let's use regular ground beef, 80-20, that's 20% fat, guys. It's not protein. It's some protein with 20% fat. So don't forget that. So watch your sources. Eat your lean proteins. I love fish. I love shrimp. I love chicken. It's easy for me. I love steak. Heck, I like salmon. Salmon's high in fat though. That's one of those ones out there that you cannot eat it all day long. You know, if I ate 3 pounds of salmon a day, I'm going to be around 250 grams of fat. My calories are going to be through the roof. So you guys got to remember that when you eat your protein or pick your protein sources, you pick sources that meet for your diet. And that's where the macro-based dieting sometimes gets confused. That's why we write specific plans. Anything you want to talk about proteins for them?
Just as wrap up proteins, please remember that all proteins break down differently. All proteins break down at different speeds, and depending on if your protein has fat in it, it's also going to change the speed. Albumin protein or iso whey protein is going to be your two fastest to break down. That's why I drink my egg whites, but every morning I have egg whites every single morning, and that's why we also like to use protein around training. It's lighter on the stomach. You don't have dense, heavy chicken. I'm never gonna recommend anyone to ever eat beef before they go train, and we'll explain that.
And that's another video in itself. Very rarely do we give it. And little Jesse
Hansen
is I think the only person I have to give it to because he's a freak of nature.
And because
of what we're talking, for the reason that we're talking about.
For the reason that we're talking about, yeah, because it literally slows down. And not only does it slow down the protein process, but it also slows down the carb process. But that's something we'll touch when we get into the fats. Well, actually, that's a good way to roll into the fats. So rolling into the fats. Fats are very complex. 9 calories per gram. So that is something we don't, when we're prepping, you're not going to want to take in a lot of fats. There's a handful of reasons why. It slows down digestion of whatever's with it. If you're eating a high fat meal, it slows down the digestion. If you use it incorrectly, it can be to your disadvantage. If you use it properly, like adding your fats in before bed, it can help hold over your hunger so you're not hungry. We're always hungry after we wake up in the morning.
There's one important thing here too. Oh. This is really important about fats.
Say hormones?
Fat blunts insulin.
Fat blunts insulin, yes.
Insulin is anabolic.
Which is why you're never going to eat fats before you go train.
High fats before you train. Unless you're keto, fats are really good early in the morning. You're coming off nighttime, you had fats at nighttime too, really good, and in the morning time, because they get the body stable. And all right, something that happens when we wake up, we stretch. You'll ever see a baby stretch when they're like 2-3 months old, they yawn, they do this. They're releasing their growth hormones. And to stabilize our insulin early in the day, like I usually fast a couple hours because I do my fasted cardio, get my kids ready for school. So I wake up and get a couple hours fasting. But fat blunts insulin. Insulin blunts growth hormone naturally. We're not talking about anything you're sticking in your body. We're talking about naturally occurring hormones in our body. I don't want to get into that subject on this topic because it's way into depth. We will get into it eventually, but not today. So if your fat stabilizes your blood sugar, that allows your growth hormone to come up. Why is that important? What does growth hormone do in our bodies? It heals us. Really important. It keeps us running on normal. It keeps our cells, regenerating. It does a lot for our body. It helps us lean out, believe it or not. Growth hormone is a great leaning agent. So why would we want to take it away by eating a shit ton of carbs, sugary carbs in the morning, and not eating our fats and keeping our blood hormone stable? So, or not blood hormone, our blood sugar levels, stable, so our growth can come up.
And it's also when you're waking up in the morning, your growth hormone is high. That's part of the reason why fasted cardio works. Is because growth hormone is technically protein sparing.
It's a huge lipolysation of fat agent. And let me tell you guys,
it's not going to let you burn protein. It's basically like a natural L-carnitine, like what we were just talking about before with the carb sources.
And more to go with fats. Now, you start craving fats the leaner you get. That's because you're missing what the body needs, what the body's used to. We have a homeostasis. That's what the body likes. When you start craving your peanut butter, you start craving all these fatty items, that's your body telling you, I want more fat. But you can't have too much fat. Remember, we're working fat off. Why are we going to give our body an abundance of fat? So like our athletes, one thing that we do is we add in fats when you need them. For the male, very early in the morning at wake and at night before bed, that's our 2 big bursts of fats that we give, you know, our larger grams. Then we usually use trace fats through the rest of the day. In an off season or a beginning of prep, I may have some red palm oil or some MCT oil or some extra virgin olive oil put over top of some rice or put in some of your foods, so we get our fats higher because it does and is responsible for making other hormones. But as we get closer to show, we decrease those fats. That way we can burn more fat and more fat and more fat because we need it to operate. One big thing about diet is we diet for your division, okay? This year, I'm going to use 3 people for example. Sarah, Phil, and myself. Dieting for 3 different divisions. I was dieting for classic, Phil for men's physique, and Sarah for wellness. All 3 different looks, all 3 different desired body fat levels. You have to diet for your division, so don't compare your diet to other people. Oh, you got this many carbs, you only have this many carbs. Well, you're not the same people. You're not the same size, same metabolism, same division, same anything. We all dieted differently. Sarah was on the least amount of carbs the last few weeks, but she tapered down very, very slowly. Phil remained on pretty good amount of carbs, and then we pulled them away.
Yeah, we did.
We pulled them in the last, what, 2 weeks? 14?
2 weeks.
Last 14 days? We
about
pulled,
12 days. It was the last 12 days.
12 days, we pulled them from him. And it was miserable, let me tell you, because he was up here and just like falling off a cliff, and he felt that falling off a cliff. Now me, I carb cycled. So, and I was on low carbs a lot of this prep coming out of another show because of a metabolic shutdown, which will be another series for you guys. But because of metabolic shutdown, I had to kind of do my carb cycle on a lower carb cycle. So we all 3 dieted differently, all showing in different divisions, all in different states of our prep, all looking different for different things. So stop comparing yourself. Anything you want to add, Phil?
I don't have anything to wrap up on. You touched over the division section pretty well.
I think we talked about the carbs, the fat, and the protein. We didn't want to get in types of diets because that's so long, and we didn't want to make this a 30-minute video. We want to try to keep these under 20, even though we have some longer ones out there, guys. So hopefully this helps you for just the basics. Guys, this is our first set of episodes. We're putting the basics out there for you. When we get to the more in detail stuff, it will be in depth. I have a whole whiteboard over here to draw stuff up for you guys. This whole room here that we're sitting in, we've turned into a YouTube room. This is
definitely like just breaking down like the video that we just did here. I mean, we can make a whole video on carbs, a whole video on fats, and a whole video on proteins. There's so much information. It's so complex. Like that's why, like for example, for me, I have a degree, I have certifications, I've learned, but I work underneath Clay because he's been doing this for 12 years. Yeah. 12 years. Like, that's a long time, y'all. So, and what you learn in a book is not always what is applicable. And I think anyone who's gone to school for anything can understand what I'm saying.
I'll tell you guys this. I became a trainer in year 2002. So it'll be 19 years of training this year. Actually, right now it's 19 years of training. It was February when I got out of my class. So 19 years of training. I've been prepping people for 12 years. I learn every year. If your coach, if people around you aren't learning, you're around the wrong people. If
you think you know everything, you're in last place. One thing, if there's one tip that you can get away from this whole video, is always keep expanding your knowledge. There's always new information. He talked about how there was the old case study where it was 1.4 to 1.7 for the protein, and then he's seeing new ones with pushing it all the way up to 2.2. Always keep learning, always keep absorbing new information. There's always something to learn from somebody. It may not always be the best information, but you can always learn something from somebody.
Let me tell you something. I've had coaches that I've learned from that did me wrong. I've learned what not to do to my clients. I've had coaches that have taken me and showed me some of the best training in the world. I've added that to my repertoire of what I know. And my goal, not just for you guys listening and him and everybody though, not just for anybody, any single person, but for everybody. Eventually, I want to teach you everything that I know. And then every one of you are better than me because you have your own knowledge that you've learned, your own experiences, plus my knowledge and my experiences. That makes you better. If somebody can't do that for you, they're not making you better. I can promise you this today. I read, listen, and breathe this stuff. And I promise you that. It annoys my wife, and she's a prep coach, and I promise you she'll tell you that right now. I will go home and listen to 3 or 4 other people's YouTube videos, different doctors, people over in Ireland, people over in Australia to learn. Guys, never stop learning. I hope you enjoy the videos that we're putting out. We got so much more information. It's very hard for us to cover the basics because we've been competing for years, but we think that's what you need to start with, and that's what we want to put out first. So we're building a base to build upon every series that we have out.
Alright guys, thanks for watching the YouTube video. Please smash that like button, hit the subscribe, leave some comments on what you guys think. If you guys have any videos you'd like for us to do, or videos for us to talk about, leave it down in the section below. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it. See you.